Hello, my name is Richard Vince, and I'm here today to talk to you a little bit about chilled out parenting. Now, if you've listened to many of these broadcasts, whether you want to call them podcasts or videocasts or whatever, you've probably heard me say that I am extremely grateful to parents who brought their kids to my classes in my young days. Now, let me wind back a little bit to help that make sense to you. Um, I started to teach martial arts for my instructor, Grandmaster Mick Blackwell, when I was 18. So, I was a novice instructor back then. I was learning on the job, as it were. You do things, you try things. Some things work well, you do more of it. Some things work less well, you do less of them. It really was learning on the job, but great fun. Um, and one of the best things ever, and this is the thing I wanted to talk to you about, is that during that time, obviously parents would bring their kids to classes. I only taught kids classes for Grandmaster Blackwell at first, so obviously parents would bring them to the class and have a chat, and you'd see how those parents dealt with the kids. Obviously, you don't need me to tell you, some were brilliant, some were dreadful, and many fell in between those two endpoints. Uh, but all the time you can learn something. When something goes really well, and you think, "Wow, that parent dealt with that amazingly." And I certainly wasn't afraid, and even now I'm not afraid to go up to somebody and say, "Wow, I like the way you dealt with that." And if I don't understand it, I'll ask them to explain it to me. Um, in a moment, I'll try to explain about something that happened really recently at our academy in Norwich. But let's not get sidetracked for the moment. So all of this time when I was teaching for Grandmaster Blackwell, doing these children's classes, and have this input from parents and whatever, really, really good. And when I'm 18 years old, I'm not thinking about having children on my own. I haven't even got a long-term relationship at that time. Just experiencing being a grown-up, really, just getting into things. So certainly no thought of children of my own at that point. After a couple of years, I started teaching classes myself, and obviously had more classes. I had adult classes and junior classes. But with the junior classes, I continued to almost subconsciously quiz and examine and remember what those parents did when they brought their kids to my classes. It wasn't like an interrogation. I want you to think I sat them down and shone a bright light on their face and said, "Right, tell me how you do this." But I just observed. I just noticed when things went well for parents, when children responded in a really positive way, or in what's the word? In an engaging way, in a way that was good for the parents and the kids. And I learned so much. And when I had children of my own, when I was 28, I think 28, yeah. You just 27. You learn so much, and you think all of these things that I'm applying now are pretty much things that I've learned from parents who brought their kids to my classes. So grateful for it. And when you step back sometimes, I've been very fortunate to be complimented sometimes. People say, "Oh, you're so laid back with the kids. You're so easygoing. You don't lose your temper. You don't get agitated easily, and all these things." And I say to them, "You know what?" And often it's a parent that'll be saying that to me. And I say to them, "You know what? Often, really, it's you parents that have helped me to get myself in that position." I don't think that I analysed it, first of all, in terms of what sort of parent I wanted to be. But with the benefit of hindsight, when I look back, I definitely wanted to be a laid-back parent. I definitely didn't want to have conflict all the time. I definitely didn't want to be butting up against my children to try and force them to do what I thought was right or correct or whatever. So, but as I said, I didn't make a conscious choice back then to be a laid-back parent. With the benefit of hindsight, if I could go back and do it again, I would make a conscious choice. I would say, yes, I definitely want to be a laid-back parent. Not so laid-back that I let my kids do whatever, because I don't think that's the right thing to do at all. But I would definitely want to manage the situation in a really laid-back way. And one of the things that I learned from many people was that if they could plan for a situation, so if they thought that some awkward situation may occur in the future or tomorrow or whatever, you're there just thinking, this is coming up, it could be difficult. They would plan for it. They would look at different scenarios. If this happens, then I could do this. If this happens, then I could do this. And I think that's brilliant, absolutely fantastic. You're planning ahead so that when things happen, it isn't quite such a surprise to you. You're thinking, actually, yeah, this is one of the scenarios that I ran through. And sometimes things will catch you out. You won't have prepared for something. Something will happen and you think, holy hell, I'm in the deep end here. I'm in hot water. How do I deal with it? Well, in that situation, deal with it in the best way you can. Stick to your principles. If you want to be laid back, or you want to be firm, or you want to be this or this, stick to your principles and get through it the best you can. Then, when the situation has passed and everyone's calm, then sit down and say, okay, could I have done that better? Would the situation have turned out differently had I said this at this point, or this at this point, or had I said nothing at this point? And look at your performance and then improve it. Do whatever you can to make it better. It's I don't want it to sound like a managerial process, but it's the most important managerial process you will ever go through. Raising your kids well and creating great relationships with your kids is the most important thing that you will ever do. And it is a management process. You have to manage the situation. It's different to managing a work situation, but it's still managing a situation. And there is absolutely no downside to going through what happened and assessing it, reassessing it, and saying, could I have done this better? Could I have done that better? And ask people. If you have friends, why not talk to them? I think there's a huge what's the word? Almost like everyone's self-conscious about saying to people, well, this happened to me the other day. How would you have dealt with it? It's almost like you're inadequate as a parent if you have to ask for help. That's not the case at all. You're not inadequate as a parent if you ask for help. You're a parent that wants to do a great job if you ask for help, aren't you? It's an obvious thing to do to me. Nobody's perfect, and as parents, we are learning on the job, aren't we? It's always like, well, I've only got 2 kids, so the first one you go one way, the second one you overcorrect. If there'd been a third one, I might have got it right. It might have been perfect, but there was no third one. So, that's the thing, isn't it? But I only say that as a humorous thing. But we're learning on the job. And if we can learn from other people's experience, that helps us to do a good job. And, there are parents around us everywhere. And we can actually speak to parents and ask for advice, or we can just watch what's going on and say, yeah, nicely handled. Nicely handled. I like that. Let me go back to this example I mentioned earlier on. This is quite recently. So, I don't know, probably maybe 5 years ago. So that would have put me mid-50s. My kid's grown up, left home. All right. So I didn't ask the question to help me raise my kids. But obviously I have grandchildren now. And I still deal with kids on a daily basis, teaching them martial arts. So this little boy had, I think he'd been playing around before the class and fallen over and hurt himself. And he really got himself into a state. And I think it was only his second or third lesson. And he was a bit embarrassed about people he didn't know very well, seeing him be upset and all of these things. And his mum, she was a young mum as well, and I thought she couldn't have been any more than 22, 23. And she took this little boy and stood him up in a quiet place. And she went through a list of questions that she had clearly prepared. Unfortunately, I don't have the list of questions. I did ask her to write them down, and that was the point that I was making about asking for advice. And the list went something like this. I can't remember exactly, but she said, "Okay, let's call him Freddie." Don't think his name was Freddie, but let's call him Freddie. She said, "Okay, Freddie, now, are you hurting? Does any part of you hurt?" I can't remember what the little boy asked, but then she said, it must have been yes, because she said, "Okay, and which part of you hurts?" Okay, so she told him. Now, does it hurt so badly that we have to stop everything that we're doing and pay all our attention to this discomfort, this hurt that you have? Sort of thought patterns. And no. All right, she said, that's really good. Now, can we notice that it's hurting, but also know that it's not really, really bad? You're just a little bit upset because it was a surprise. And would it be okay? Do you think you're able to carry on with what you were going to do today? Yes, he said. Now, she said, before we carry on, do you feel safe? Yes. Do you know that there are people around you who will look after you? Yes. And do you know that everything will be okay? Yes. All right. So, is it all right for you to carry on, go back into the class and join in with everyone else? No, you're going to be calm and everything will be okay? Yes. But you feel safe and everything's good? Yes. Off you go then. Now, I don't know if that was exactly the order of the questions, and they were exactly the questions, but I thought it was a little piece of genius myself. I thought she'd calmed the little lad down. She'd asked him about his hurt. She'd asked him to describe it. She'd asked him where it was. She'd asked how serious it was. And she'd asked, was it going to affect everything? But I think the real genius part of it was that she asked, do you feel safe? Do you feel that there are people around you who will look after you and care for you? Do you feel like everything's going to be okay? And she really took this lad and helped him to understand, just by asking questions, that everything was okay. There was nothing to panic about. The only thing he had in his life at that moment that was bad was a little bit of pain. And often we could do that so well and so often with children. This thing about pain, especially with kids, if they haven't experienced a huge amount of pain is a real shock to them. And it's almost as if they don't really know how to deal with it. And a little bit of coaching on how to deal with pain is really good. And if you have a little preparation that you can roll out when your children experience pain or discomfort or whatever, then maybe it would help. Maybe it would really help you to help them deal with it. Anyway, so I think my point really is that decide on the sort of parent you want to be. Then work on how to achieve it. And there are no right ways or wrong ways. All of us make some dreadful cock-ups. I've made some horrendous mistakes in my parenting as I've gone along. All I've tried to do is not make them twice. I've apologized to my kids and said, look, that was a bad decision. Dad was wrong. I am sorry. I'll do my very best to make sure it doesn't happen again. But I was wrong, and I'm okay with that. And I'd say to them, you can't expect me to always be right and always get things right, any more than I would always expect you to get things right. All we can do is our best and try to make as many things go well as we can. All right. So I hope that helps. I hope it's useful. And it's this thing about paying it forward, isn't it? If I could take all the information about parenting and managing children that I have and pass it forward to people who have children, I would gladly do it, because I've done that. People have passed it on to me, and I've taken what's on offer, and I've remembered as much as I can, and tried to pass it on to my kids and the children that I teach, and hopefully the parents of the children that I teach. They'll often sort of comment on, he responded differently when you said that than when I say that to him, or whatever, and you just think, okay, well, maybe there's a different way of doing things. Anyway, I don't want to ramble on. That's the point of the broadcast. If you have any questions, please email them to me. I'll do my very best to answer, or you can put them in the comments down here, and again, I'll do my best to answer. It might be good in the comments because somebody else may have a similar question. All right, thanks very much. I look forward to speaking to you soon.